From the Middle is a founding member of Odd Pods Media. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to episode number 238 of From the Middle. We are three middle-class guys living in the middle of America in the middle chapters of our lives with points of view somewhere in the middle. If you're not familiar with our podcast, we're a comedy culture and interview style podcast that isn't clickbaity like some of those stories and podcasts out there. We like to have calm, reasonable, fun, and funny conversations that normal people can relate to, and we have a ton of fun doing that. In this episode, we invite our friend Jeff Bittner in as a guest in fourth chair to talk about his life and a little bit about his awesome new book. You're going to love this episode and this interview. Check it out.
Oh, for the love. Sorry, just clearing my Mountain Dew hole.
I got my phone hole cleaned today.
That's where you keep it? You're so cerebral and you're so developed and evolved.
From the Middle after dark over here.
Dylan and Kendall, I am so excited because two of my friends reached out to me in the last 2 weeks and said, "Hey, man, hope things are well. You got to have this guy on your podcast." And they said, "Jeff Bittner just wrote a book. It's awesome. You need to talk to him about it." And I was like, "What?" And then the second guy, "Hey, man, hope things are well. Happy New Year. Hey, did you know Jeff Bittner just wrote a book? You should definitely have him on the podcast." So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls,
day, I think,
and everybody else,
day, right?
Yeah, exactly. Please welcome our dear friend and fourth chair for this episode, Mr. Jeff Bittner. Yeah.
Thank you, Corey. Good to be here. This is exciting. I love what you guys are doing on this podcast, and yeah, I'm excited about talk about wherever this thing takes us.
Awesome. Sounds good. You fit right in already with the backwards hat. I'm loving it. Styling and profiling, my friend.
This is me, right? This is when I'm out and about. Everybody knows it's the backwards baseball cap. It started back in sixth grade. I had an old school Notre Dame one, and it was white with the Notre Dame script. You can still get them today. And I wore that thing until my senior year. It was if you guys wear hats, you understand this. That thing was, the only word is crunchy, right? It was brown like this. The entire plastic was split. I had it taped and God, I love that hat. And eventually I think my mom just threw it away. I washed it and she just pitched it. So I went and bought the exact same hat at the store and put it back on and rock and roll.
The rest of the laundry smell like feet.
Right. That thing was raw. So yeah, love backwards hat.
Absolutely. Well, welcome. We're excited to have you. We're excited to get into what those guys reached out to me for. We might not get to that until the second half, but just by way of a little background and context. So how Dylan and I knew Jeff was back in our network marketing days, and we were a part of different teams. We were here in Columbus. Jeff was down in Cincinnati. So we didn't hang out all the time, but certainly would get together a couple times a year. Sometimes you'd come up to Columbus and do presentations. And one of my favorite Jeff Bittner memories is a story that you used to tell. I think you took this story on a circuit and told it at a few different workshops. In the story is a wonderful nugget, but if you don't mind, just so people can get a little sense of you and your humor and the way that you think, would you mind recounting the Nintendo Wii story?
Oh, the Wii story, yes. So, okay. One of the reasons I love this podcast so much is that you are my people, right? I am a middle in the middle of the middle, right? So back in, man, what was that? 05, 06?
Yeah, around there.
We came out like somewhere in that window.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So back then, like Black Fridays, people would get in line, and it was crazy. If the newest system came out, people couldn't just order stuff offline, so you'd have to go get in line. And I grew up loving Nintendo, had all the systems. Wii was coming out. We didn't have kids at the time. We were dinks, dual income, no kids, living our best life, traveling. Kids are great, but being a dink ain't bad either. So, so we were like, let's go get the Wii. This thing looks awesome. Let's head on over to Walmart and see what's going on. So it was going to launch at midnight. So we went, I don't know, around lunch that day or whatever it was, my wife and I. And we pull up to Walmart, and it is 100 people deep. Tents, the whole deal. And they're all waiting outside. I'm like, oh, you freaking kidding me?
Wait, tents as in the atmosphere, or they were in literal camping tents?
Yes. So it was a tense atmosphere, and they were intense.
Okay.
So we walk into Walmart. It's packed. They've got launching at midnight Wii signs all over the place. So we make our way around and go back to the electronics department, which is just slammed. The guys working there are miserable. They don't want to be there. They know what's coming at midnight. And so I catch this guy who's stocking this shelf. And I was like, man, how many Wiis are you guys even getting in this place? There is a line outside that's got to be 100 people deep. And he doesn't even look at me. He's like shoveling stuff. He's like, yeah, those people aren't getting Wiis. And I was like, what do you mean they're not getting Wiis? They go, not a single one of them are on the list. So the next obvious question is, what list? So I asked that. I said, hey, dude, what list are you talking about? He goes, yeah, we got a list behind the counter. We're getting 25 Wiis. And if you're not on that list, you're not getting one. I said, so how do I get on the list? And he said, well, and he stands up, walks over behind the counter. He goes, you can be number 18. Fantastic.
I love it.
I take it, I write my name, and I said, so I want to make sure I'm very clear about this. I don't have to go wait in line. I don't have to do anything. I just have to show up here at midnight and I get Wii number 18. He said, yes. Wonderful. So we go, we shop around, walk outside, and it is just that line is getting longer and longer and longer. And it's one of those moments where I could have been a better person. Right. I feel like I could have gone and said, hey guys, heads up. There's a list. You may want to go ask about it, but I didn't. So we left, went out, spent our day, had dinner, came back at about 10:45-ish, 11. And by this point, it is around the building. And this is a super Walmart. No joke, guys, that we're talking 200 plus people waiting in line for this thing. So we park, walk up, and just kind of tuck in at the front of the line. And this dude, he was first in line with his little group, and he was wasted. I mean, they had been drinking all day. I don't know how he was wasted. He's like, dude, you can't be here. And I said, well, we're just here to pick up our Wii at midnight. And he goes, what are you talking about? Dude, you got to get to the end of the line. And so I said, well, why? We're on the list. And he goes, what the hell are you talking about? I said, the list. You guys don't know about the list? There's a list inside. And people are like, no, there isn't. Da, da, da. Like they all start bantering back and forth. And I said, I promise you, one of you may want to go inside and ask about this. And so the drunk guy's like, dude, go in there and check. So we're standing out there, it's my wife and I, and we can see inside the store. So he walks in and there's a greeter just standing there, and he goes up and asks a question, nothing happens. And then he starts walking back and he intercepts somebody. Like I can see them through the front door. And he starts talking to them, and the person starts talking back, and then he flies off the rails. Arms flailing, freaking out. He comes stopping. He's like, there's a list. And I said, I don't know what to tell you. And they said they've got a waiting thing, but dude, that list, it's already full. And and all of a sudden it just started spreading like down the line.
Oh.
At the exact moment they open the doors to allow the line in. So everybody starts funneling in. And so my wife and I are just standing there, and I'm like, I'm going to get killed. Like someone is going to kill me. So we moved to the back of the store, and everybody's just hanging out for like an hour. And by this time it has moved about. Like people are like, oh, there's a list, we're on the list, and that's all you keep hearing, this murmuring about, we were here all day, bah. Midnight hits and this dude walks out. It's the same guy I talked to. He's got his list and he just says, okay, number 1, Smith. Dude comes walking up. He hands him the Wii, walks right. He gets the number 18 and that dude's over there. I'm looking at him and he goes, 18, Bittner. I walk through the crowd. I grab my Wii and I smile at him as I walk out. I'm just holding this thing, go up, pay for it. And Mary and I run to our car. I'm like, I am going to get jacked in this parking lot. And we get in the car and drive home and Wii it up.
Enjoyed the Wii.
Exactly. And it's, it's funny, but there's an interesting message built into that there's an importance to not necessarily always following the crowd, right? Sometimes it's important for you to ask the questions that you deem important in your own life versus just seeing what everybody else is doing and following exactly what they're doing. Because it might lead to the exact same destination of you standing there expecting one thing to happen, and the exact opposite happens because you didn't proactively ask the questions you needed to ask. And so it's a fun story, but I'm glad I asked that question. And so that's the story about how we got our Wii.
Oh, that's so great. I love that story so much. And I remember you would tell it in our sort of after hours training sessions that we would do with our team. And you just had people hanging on every word of that story because they're feeling me like, what's going to happen? It's just such a great story. And there's also so many threads you can tug on about like the human condition and us being lemmings as human beings and just following the person in front of us. Yep. Anyway, I'm sure that asking good questions and being proactive is a theme that may come up more with you. But man, I love that story. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's in the vault. I haven't told that story in a long time.
Oh, that's great.
That's good. It's relatable too. Like there's the obvious one of anybody who's had an on-campus college experience of the door being locked, right? And nobody checked the knob. And then, you got the one smart ass that walks right up to it and opens the door and walks in.
Right.
And you've got that. What an interesting thing about that story is like, would you have asked the questions if you showed up and you were the fourth person in line, or would you have just gotten in line with confidence at that point? And so like confidence doesn't even come into play with whether or not you should, do your own due diligence and seek answers. That is super interesting. I love it.
Yeah.
I would love to go back and ask that kid too. Like, was that something that y'all came up with? Like just somebody wrote lines on a clipboard and was like, maybe we just make 25 lines? Or was that like a Nintendo mandated, like for all? Anyway, so much I want to know about that story.
It was just I can tell you, it was a Word doc printout with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through 25 with little lines running across. That's all it was. I mean, it wasn't branded Walmart. It wasn't branded Nintendo. It was someone printed this thing off Word 98 and slapped it on a board and people filled it out. That was it.
Somebody was like, people are freaking out about this thing. We're only getting 25 units. Let's just make a list.
Yeah, it was smart. Good for them.
I love it. So Jeff, tell the listeners what you do during the day and a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So to kind of make sense of what I do during the day, let me tell you a little about kind of where I came from. So I'm a Midwest guy, right? Grew up in Cincinnati. I've lived here my entire life, and I was blessed with the opportunity to have a awesome immediate family. I have an older brother and an older sister. Both my parents are together. They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary a couple years ago. I mean, it's pretty awesome. However, the real blessing came from the fact that I had 16 first cousins that lived within 15 miles of me. And so every weekend we would get together in the summer at my grandpa's. They had a pool. And my grandpa was very much kind of the patriarch of our family. He was a small business owner. He ran a construction company here in Cincinnati. World War II vet. The guy was just a stud. I mean, we have it easy in comparison to what our grandparents had to go through. And so he was an amazing man. He taught me everything from servant leadership to the fact that you never ruin a good story with the truth, to the importance of Sunday afternoon naps. And even though there was so many of us that were his grandkids, my grandpa and I had a very special relationship. And when you were 13 and a boy in my family, you became what was called cheap manual labor on the job site at grandpa's local, whatever he was working, usually gas stations or houses or whatever. And so I spent my summers with my amazingly tan skin, as you can see,
Yes.
working up on roofs and hauling shingles up and down ladders and cleaning up job sites and just getting baked, and not in the good way. And so I was just sunburned constantly. And being a t-shirt kid, and what I mean by that is that when I had to go to the public pool and swim, I had to wear a t-shirt because I'm so fair. That was, that's a whole nother traumatic thing. Right? Attaboy. Good for you.
I get it. I'm right there with you.
Right? So the t-shirt kid, that's a Midwest problem. But 13, 14, 15, 16, I worked construction with my grandpa, and we would have lunch, and every single day at lunch, he would ask me the exact same question. Hey, Jeff, what do you want to be when you grow up? And my answer to him was the exact same every single day. Grandpa, anything but this. And he would laugh and we'd joke about it. And at the time, I didn't get what he was doing, but it took me thinking back that he was programming me. He was purposefully doing that because he knew I didn't want to do construction. Not only was I not very good at it, I just didn't want to do it. And he was like, he had told me at one point, he said, son, you have a gift for wanting to help people. You should do that.
Mm.
And I decided that I was going to go into physical therapy and kind of follow that path. So I did for a short stint, did some work in pediatrics for a short period of time, got my degree in it, realized that wasn't the space for me, but I also had the opportunity to spend time with him as he would talk with other small business owners in the area. And he had a very successful business. And I was like, you know what, maybe I can do business consulting. That would be cool. So I ended up getting into business consulting. I did that for 15 years for small businesses. And during that 15-year tenure, I had the opportunity to work with 3 grandchildren of people that knew my grandpa, because my grandpa had helped their grandpa continue to stay in business.
Mm.
So talk about a kind of full circle type experience. That was really, really cool. And that journey for me kind of came to an end. I was a part of a company that was owned by a husband and wife. They divorced. It got very, very messy, very, very ugly. Ended up leaving that. Came on board at a different company where I've been for the last 5 years called Brain Trust. And what we do here is we work with companies of all size, but primarily enterprise size companies, typically Fortune 500. And we teach them primarily their sales, marketing, and operations teams how to communicate more effectively by understanding neuroscience and what kind of happens within the brain when you're having communication with someone, and how to share through story effectively, how to ask effective questioning, how to really take your communication capabilities to a whole nother level. And that's been a really cool opportunity. It's opened up some different stuff for me to learn and kind of process and go through. And currently I run our entire small business division there through our digital academy that we built up and are in the process of growing right now. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about me, kind of why I do what I do. So
it's fascinating. Your intelligence inspires me. And we were talking a little bit. We had two things happen. We had a little pre-call, like a fitment call, to make sure that what you wanted to talk about, what we want to talk about, was totally aligned. And we were totally geeking out in the first 3 minutes. And I was like, yeah, man, why are we even having this call? You just need to come on and talk. Drew and Brennan were spot on. So shout out to those guys. Thanks. but also just professionally, just you and I talking business consulting and the art and science that is facilitating leaders and executives and salespeople. And you were talking to me even before we started recording tonight, before Dylan and Kendall hopped on, a little bit about sort of the different things, chemicals that go through the brain when you're having a higher level, quote unquote, like sales type of conversation versus just four guys shooting the breeze like we are tonight, and the different things that happen. And you said such a relatable thing. You said you go in the shower after like an important meeting or an important presentation or sales call and think, oh, why didn't I? Because literally there are different things going through your brain than would be if you were just at your local pub hanging out with a buddy. And that whole thing, and I'm probably doing it a horrific disservice describing.
No, that's right.
Like, it's fascinating just hearing you talk about sort of the neuroscience behind that type of stuff, and it's really cool.
Yeah, it's a really super interesting subject. It's something that, everybody's continuing to learn more about. Every time we think we know everything there is to know, something else pops up, right?
Yeah.
And shoot, what was it, like 2 or 3 weeks ago? They just found out a new muscle in the body that they didn't even know existed. So we think we know it, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, our own genius gets baffled by God just proving we don't.
Yeah. So in addition to your intellectual and professional side, you, like us, can I say you can be a bit of a geek? When did you
100%.
when did your love of comics and gaming, and when did all that start? When you were like on the job site and ran off at lunch and were reading Spider-Man, or like when did you let your geek flag fly, as we say?
Man, so being an 80s, 90s kid growing up, I had the Peter Parker alter ego, right? Like when I was in high school, back in high school when parties were a thing, that apparently just isn't even a thing anymore. That's a whole nother topic of conversation that is hurting the youth of society. But anyway, I digress. I was a closet geek, right? Because I didn't want, I had my reputation at high school. I was kind of I was in the popular place. I didn't, but then secretly all the popular kids played video games anyway. So I didn't know why we, thought we were being, but it all began. I got an Atari when we were super little, played that. That was really cool. But what really took it to the next level is on my birthday, when I was 11 years old, I got a Nintendo. And I had a birthday party. I know the guys who were at the birthday party. Some of these guys I haven't seen in 30 years, but I can picture them clearly in my head. There was 6 of them. I got it. I freaked out. We went in, we played Duck Hunt and Mario, and I got one game with it called Dragon Warrior. And Dragon Warrior, are you guys familiar with Dragon Warrior?
Not at all.
Okay, so it's an RPG, old school RPGs, like Final Fantasy or one of those type of role-playing games. And I was introduced that night to the entire world of side quests, to looting, to going into item shops and buying herbs to heal myself, to buying gear that can be upgradable, to going and fighting dragons and saving princesses. And dude, I was like a crack addict. I was sitting there in front of this screen, just mesmerized at this entire concept. Yes, there it is, Dragon Warrior. So my friend Rob, who was there, he and I stayed up. We pulled an all-nighter. The other guys all fell asleep. Me and him, dude, we went out on adventures and fought slimes, and like all the images you got pulled up right here, like that's what we spent our entire night doing. And I was absolutely hooked from that point on, and loved those type of games. Whereas a lot of my other friends, I played Madden, and I did. So they were cool to get together. If you're with your buddies and you could play some NHL hockey, and those were like fun party games. But then Rob and I would get together over at his house, and I'd stay the entire weekend, and we'd eat Tony's pizzas and make a cake with, yellow cake with chocolate icing. And then we'd, drink some Tang, and we would just kill it. And we would just play these games and just stay up all night. We'd hang sheets over his door so that his parents wouldn't see the light. And we thought we were super slick, but they always knew we were, all that crap you do when you're 12, 13, 14 and just living your best life because it's a middle school summer. So you're too young to get a job, but you're old enough to be able to hang out and do cool stuff with your friends. Like that was the zone, man. And so that's what we did. And so on weekends when I wasn't partying, I was at my buddy's Rob's house, just reading comics, and it was, yeah. So I grew up loving that stuff, still love it today, loud and proud.
Living like kings, man.
Yeah.
Follow-up question. Do you want to shout out any fandoms that you're a part of? Any, it can be movies, it can be comics, it can be games, it can be whatever.
Yeah. So Final Fantasy, love the Final Fantasy series. Comics, love the Spawn series. If any of you guys read comics or read Spawn, totally dug those. I would say I'm a huge Mario Kart fan. Love Mario.
Who's your go-to player?
Ooh, great question. So I do enjoy me some Yoshi. However, typically I do better if I play as Luigi. But yeah, I love Yoshi. My buddy Rob, who again, Toad. Yeah.
Toad with the blue cart, man. Nobody can beat me. I challenge you.
Okay. Well, all right. Let's not get crazy here. So Toad is great. The problem with Toad is that all you get is anyway. I'll tell you what. Let's you and I connect.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens.
No secrets. We're just gonna.
I just want you to know, though, you cut yourself off because you felt like that was a tangent. That's what this is for.
Yeah, right.
To be clear, you can keep going. It's okay.
All right. So again, Yoshi, the beauty of Yoshi, let's not kid ourselves here. The dude has an egg that I fire that explodes and can give me random pickup items, right? You're stuck with mushrooms. Now, my 14-year-old would argue diligently that you are correct because she is Toad 100%. However, and she puts up a good fight. My daughter's a very good Mario Kart player. However, dude, if I'm rolling with Yoshi on the right course, I will say it comes down to tracks, right?
It does matter, yes.
Dude, you put me on Baby Park, and it's done. I will smoke you. Give me a cart.
That's just an oval. It's just an oval. There's no.
Dude, that's where the skill comes into play. Like I can be on Rainbow Road and somebody can go flying off the edge somewhere, and you're like, well, that's bullcrap. But that's the reality. The oval, you're in a confined space, and so it's a lot more. Dude, the real talent comes in those type of courses.
Okay.
Take that, F1 guy.
So again, man, I'm totally Yoshi. What about you two? So you're obviously Toad. You guys play Mario Kart?
Yeah.
Very
sure.
casually.
Okay.
For funsies, Koopa.
There he is.
I love playing with.
Dude, look at him.
So I love playing with Koopa. More competitively, I do like Tanuki Mario.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, Tanuki. Both of those guys in the little yellow cart with the green speed wheels. I'm pretty tough to beat.
Yeah.
I will say I'm partial to Donkey Kong, but not for any practical reasons. For what used to be a practical reason, Super Nintendo Mario Kart Donkey Kong was king, literally. Yeah. But Donkey Kong or Bowser, all of us quickly found out that you start slow and then you end fast, and that's what you want to do. And so whenever I play with my kids, they play far more than I do. But when I jump in, I tend to go for Donkey Kong just because that's what I'm used to seeing. But yeah, sticking on the video game thing here. So when Corey showed some pictures of what we know as early NES RPG looking games, there's a whole generation of people that have no idea what we're talking about, and if they saw those images, they would think that's not an RPG game. That's not what that is. You got to be kidding me. And it causes something in my mind to go off that says, back in those days, like you had to have a level of imagination in your mind. Like those games still like shook us and like addicted us to video games. And it's because of the things of the storyline that went on in our heads. It was like reading a book versus watching a movie
Right.
these days. And today, like all of that imagination, not all of it, but so much of that imagination gets filled in for you just with just with the pure visuals of the whole thing. Um and the cut scenes and things like that that go on. And so I wonder if there's a detriment to imagination to video games today, especially in the fantasy world than what they used to be. I wonder from your perspective, and if this relates to your career at all and to your expertise. A, do you think that's true? And B, if so or if not, how do you think video games translate into business? Thinking properly about customer relations and those kinds of things.
That's an interesting question. So to answer the first part of that question first, outside of, I'll just say Squaresoft, which is the company that creates all the Souls games. Those types of games, if you're familiar with any of those, like Dark Souls, are exceptionally difficult games. And they're made brutally difficult on purpose. It's one of the trademarks for those type of games. However, outside of that, with the ability to access the answer to any question, to any puzzle, to any challenge in any game through a wiki, YouTube, wherever, kids just have it at a fingertip.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, in games like that, they were brutally difficult, to the point that we had graph paper and I would have to map out the dungeons myself, because you would walk in a 8-bit corridor. So it's like eat, ooh, eat, ooh, eat. And like, it's just the same image over and over. And you're in this huge maze type arena. And if you walk 3 steps forward, you're going to fall down a pit and get ported to the front. So you have to go down again. So now you know, okay, I moved 2 steps. So now I go right. And you walk right until you fall down a pit. You start it over again. And I draw how many steps I take on my graph paper until we mapped every one of those dungeons so that you could get through it. Kids these days would never do that. They would never have the patience for it from an instant gratification standpoint, because why would you? Right? The only thing we had back in the day, and I don't know if you guys were familiar with this, was the Nintendo hotline. Do you guys remember that at all?
No, I remember like hoping to have a friend who would read it in a magazine somewhere.
Right? Nintendo Power was
Like,
where it was at, right? If you could get your Nintendo Power. So there was a phone number that you could call, and it cost money. The phone number was 1-206-885-7529. You dial that thing enough, it just sticks in your head, right? It's like you can probably rip off, because of your ages, all your friends' phone numbers when you were younger. Well, that's one of the numbers that stuck with me. And it was the Nintendo hotline. You could call up and you get a game counselor. And these 18-year-old dudes were high as a kite, just sitting somewhere with a whole thing of spreadsheets. And you call up and you're like, man, I'm lost in Zelda, and I'm trying to, figure out how to find the blue ring in Ganon's dungeon, and I don't know where to go. And they're like, all right, so here and they just walk you through it. And that's what you had. It cost you $2.99 a minute, but at least you got the answer. And so there is something lost today from the immediate answers at our fingertips. I heard a comedian one time, he was talking about this. He goes, when I was younger, someone asked me a question one time, and they said, when do you think Ernest Hemingway's birthday was? And we sat around the kitchen table and everybody kind of asked each other, and nobody really knew. And so we went and we asked our friends, and no one knew. And so we decided we were going to go to the library, but the library was closed, so we couldn't access that. So we went to our grandparents and asked he went through this entire process of having these conversations and what those conversations led to. And this entire story opened up with just him asking the question of when Ernest Hemingway's birthday was. And he brought it back to the point of the entire thing. And it was a great story. It was beautifully put together. But at the end, he said, today I can find out in 5 seconds. But look what I would have missed out on had I had access to this exact same information. So technology is amazing. The problem is that we so often replace communication with technology, right? So many people, we don't, my wife still laughs at me because she's a texter. Oh my God. And she can rip through it, right? I am not. I would much rather have a phone call. And it infuriates me when she's like, I need to ask my brother this question. I'm like, well, why don't you just call him? Well, I'll just text him. And then he doesn't answer her. And I was like, well, what? Just call him. No, I'll just text him. And people today just don't want to have those type of conversations on the phone anymore that I've seen. And so and maybe that leads into the second part of that question that you had asked, right? Is that, from a communication standpoint, the fact that we used to get together and play Madden and NHL hockey, and then ultimately when we hit college, dude, let's not forget Bond, because that was legit. I mean, that's what brought FPS shooters and the whole idea of couch co-op, and
that changed the landscape, man.
100%. I mean, that's when it became real to a lot of people about the legitimacy of video games. All of a sudden, they weren't the geeky thing to do anymore that you kind of did off to the side. Now everybody was playing Bond, and it became very, very mainstream. And then once we all graduated college, our age group started getting into video games, and now video games are prolific and they're all around the world. And now they're being, what worked in video games are now being used inside mobile apps to get people hooked on them. What were used inside video games are now being used inside of digital academies to get people to come back and read it, right? So yeah, there's a huge component to the question that you asked about what does that look like in the business space with how video games have influenced our communication today. And it's immense, in my opinion.
You guys were talking about the difference of how you approach games, and a lot now is sort of like there's an invisible walkway that you can walk through in the game. You can't really, it's not open sandbox. You can't just go off and explore. And it was reminding me of one of the very first RPGs I ever saw. I'm sharing an image now on YouTube if you're watching. King's Quest. On computer. I remember the 3.5-inch floppy disk, my cousin popping this in, and you literally had to type in like, look, or open your eyes. You had to type in the commands to make things happen in the game. Look behind that tree. You've discovered a key. It's rusty. What could it go to? And I was like, wow, like that would annoy the heck out of, and I don't want to be one of those kids these days type of guys, but like to sit there and go like, you have to have some creative thought. Command, see if there's a list. Put your name on the list.
Right?
Exactly.
It's true.
You're number 18, but like I remember watching this with like eyes as big as saucers. What are you doing? And then you walk off the side of the screen and a whole nother landscape appears. And now you're in a scene that you didn't know was even there. It was just mind blowing for the time. Now it looks like a pixelated mess, but yeah, King's Quest, man.
Well, there was a certain level of stick-to-itiveness, is that a word, that you had to have too, because you had 3 games. You didn't have PlayStation Plus with 175 catalogs and then an iPad sitting there with 18 million games that you could download and play. And I'm not knocking a younger generation for having possibilities, but if I couldn't beat level 1 of Echo the Dolphin, I just had nothing else to do. That was it. If I couldn't beat level 1 of Lion King on Sega Genesis, I just couldn't do anything else. There were 3 games, and if I was stuck on 3 games, I was stuck on 3 games. And you could point to the internet now. We did have Nintendo Power, but I remember at the time, like a lot of those games, the game magazines were $20. So like that was a big consideration. Above and beyond the cost of a $30 game was another $15 or $20 guide to walk you through it, assuming that you could still do whatever crazy Mario triple jump you needed to do to get to the platform to even finish the level. And so, there was that whole element of it too. If you're frustrated now, you just turn it off and go find another game. And then you don't ever have to go back to that if you didn't want. So
Or just
it's
pop it on the old Game Shark adapter, and that would give you all.
Right.
Mhm.
that's right. Yeah. You at that point you're begging for a cheat code to be able to get to the next level.
Dude, Lion
That's
King.
it.
I got some PTSD from that game. That is, dude, those games were brutal. Brutal.
Yeah.
Three lives, man.
Completely unnecessarily brutal. Like it's Lion King. No one needed to be stuck on level 1.
No, but I know the exact level you're talking about because it was horrible. You'd have to jump on the giraffes' heads and they'd flip you, and it was horrible. So yeah, so that one was brutal. There was 3 in my mind that were just ruthless games that kids today would never even attempt, in my opinion. Most of them would never even attempt. Number 1, so I'll put Lion King in there. Lion King is brutal. Number 2 is Ghost and Goblins. If you guys ever played Ghost and Goblins.
Yes.
Right? That was a vicious game.
Mm-hmm.
What
Third,
console was that on?
Nintendo.
Okay.
Mhm.
Third, Battletoads.
Yeah, Battletoads.
Those games were just ruthless to be ruthless.
All right. Well, I'm excited to get to level 2. And that happens after the break. So we're going to hear some words from some of our friends in Odd Pods Media, and we'll be right back to talk all things geeky with our boy Jeff and get into a little bit about this book that we've been teasing you about. So we'll be right back.
Hey, I'm Pantsless Aaron.
This is Stevie.
And I'm Augie.
And we are BFYTW, a podcast all about playing games and having fun. Our games are usually based on British panel shows and game shows, but we'll play anything that captures our attention and imagination. Why? It's right there in the title.
You'll never guess what the F stands for.
And we're back. Guys, so we've been talking about video games and a lot about fantasy, a lot about RPG, and we've been hinting about something. And over what is to me your right shoulder, I see something. Can you tell us about that handsome looking book on your shelf?
It is rather handsome.
Corey's got his own copy.
Right? Let's go. So, Corey, my man.
Yes, sir.
Get it. So, yeah, so that is Your Quest. And it is called the Retro RPG Challenge. It is book 1 of a series that I'm in the midst of currently penning. And it's been a incredibly fun journey putting this thing together. And so, yeah, it's real simplistically, it's the story of a guy who is right in our age group. He grew up playing the role-playing games we've been talking about here, and he gets invited to help showcase a brand new game that's coming out to market called Your Quest. Nobody's really ever seen it before. And instead of doing the traditional, E3 or PlayStation launches, or inviting people to come in and test it who are part of the publishing locations or some of the gaming sites like IGN or Kotaku or any of those type of sites, they decide to do a huge one-day tournament, and it's going to be teams. It's going to be 10 teams, 2 on a team, and they're going to go through 3 different challenges to determine who are the best or who knows the most about old school RPGs. And whoever wins gets access to the brand new game. And so the story is that full one-day challenge of our main character, Scott, going with his buddy to take on these challenges. And they are massive challenges. This is not some rinky-dink thing. And it was really super fun to write because it's very pop culture filled, all 80s and 90s. Literally, the chapter titles for every single chapter is either quote, name of a movie, name of a song from the 80s and 90s. Every single chapter. because that was just such a fun era. It was such a great era to grow up in. And I know everybody feels that way about their own eras, but man, the 80s and 90s were special. They were great.
Yeah,
They
but
were
we're right.
We are right, because it was before everybody knew where everybody was, but you could still get together and play video games. And so we had technology, but technology didn't quite have us yet. So it was a good time.
The book is beautiful. I got my copy at the end of last week. I'm excited to dig in. My eldest daughter, Lily, and I are fighting over who gets to start it. So we
Right
might
on.
go ahead and buy a second one. But how in the world did you even get into this like sort of like avenue of literature and come up with a story? Self-publishing is a whole other beast. And I'm so interested to hear about what that quest was like.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Well done.
Wordsmith.
So this was about 2 years ago. So at work, my CEO, he had kind of posed something at the beginning of 2022, and he said, "Hey, look, why don't each one of you kind of go out and take a class, do something to better yourself, or find something that you can enjoy doing, but then maybe bring back as a tool here within the company that can be utilized." And so,
What a great boss, by the way.
right, yeah. So Jeff's great from a visionary standpoint. And so I went out, and we have a blog that runs through our company, and I'm in charge of that. And so I wanted to get better at editing, and I wanted to become a better writer. So I went and I took some courses on editing that was super helpful, but it ended up leading to some classes that I found online from an author in the fantasy world named Brandon Sanderson. And if anybody who's listening to this, or if you guys know who Brandon is, he's probably the most prolific fantasy writer of our generation. The guy is just a machine, and he puts out some phenomenal literature. And so he had some classes that he did, and I ended up going through those. And I kind of had this story in my head that I wanted to almost write a love letter to my family, but incorporate the stuff that I love. And so that's what I did. Is every year I have the opportunity to go with 4 of my closest friends, all guys, and we go out to a cabin in the woods for 5 days, and we do what's called Guys Weekend. And Guys Weekend is just that. Man, we go out there. We each have our own roles. I supply the place. My buddy Nick supplies the AV and handles all the surround sound. My buddy Rob brings the majority of the alcohol. My buddy Drew cooks, and my buddy Brennan shows up and makes us laugh. And so it's important to know your role. So we do this, and it is just it's something I look forward to every single year. So 2022, I was kind of in this mindset of doing this, and I wanted to create this story for my kids and for my friends. And I had this idea of what I wanted to do here by incorporating all the thousands of hours I put in these type of games. And I was driving out there with my buddy Nick, and I was kind of laying this whole thing out for him of what I was wanting to create. And we got out there. And at Guys Weekend, the rule is you do what you want to do. If you want to hang back and you just want to play video games on the huge projection screen we put up, play video games. If you want to go shoot guns, go shoot guns. If you want to go for a hike, it doesn't matter. Do what you want to do. So I ended up sitting down, and I ripped out like 20,000 words in like 2 days. And because it just started coming to me. I knew what I wanted to do, and I started to incorporate it. And I decided that, I'm going to write this. I'm going to share it with my friends and family, and that'll be the end of it. And one book I finished, and I just kind of kept going, and I just kept going. And over a few months, I ended up writing the first 3 books, and I ended up laying out an entire roadmap for an 8-book series, because it just became this super fun thing for me. And I hadn't had a hobby like this for what felt like almost decades. I mean, I had video games, but I don't know. Growing up, I don't know if you guys were the same way, but my dad and his friends all had hobbies. Like, they all could do stuff with their hands. Like, my dad rebuilds Model T cars from the ground up. It's amazing. And he's got an entire collection of them, and he's sold them, and he takes them in parades, and he tours with them, and it's just amazing what he does with his hands. And all of his friends either do that, or they do woodworking, or they do sculpting. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And what was so interesting is I was looking across to kind of our age group, and it was just something that dawned on me that so many of guys in our age group just don't have creative outlets outside of television, video games, or their kids. Like there just isn't this do-it-yourself attitude anymore. Why would you do it yourself when you can go on Angie's List and have somebody do it for you? So it's almost like this mindset and the culture has set in. I don't want to get on a soapbox about this, but something sparked creatively that all of a sudden I had this different outlet that I could get creative. And it took me back to those 80s and 90s when I had to get creative to advance. And so the same thing happened here. And so I ended up writing these stories, but I wasn't gonna publish them. I was just gonna give them to my friends and family and be like, hey, enjoy this. This was really fun to write. And my wife read it and my kids read it, and they were like, Dad, you got to get this out there. Like, you really need to get this out there. I said, yeah, but it's really kind of a niche market. Like, I don't know. And really all of that it was an excuse because I was scared about what people were going to think about it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I am of the personality that I am a people pleaser. Like if we had, back in the MLM days when Corey and I would get up and I would do these presentations in front of 200 people, and I was good at it. I had fun with it. But if I saw one person in the crowd who was sitting there, like this, and wasn't laughing, I would sit there and just get in my own head about why isn't that person having a good time? Why I want to make sure that why aren't they laughing at my jokes? I'm being really funny, or am I being fun? And this whole cycle starts kicking in, and I felt that happening again with this book. Like it was an excuse not to put it out there. And
was it, can I stop you there and say, was it like, because being a geek now is cool. Thank you to Marvel movies and
Amen.
that like brought the comics into the forefront, and all these closeted geeks were like, yeah, I've been following these characters for decades, and it was cool. So was it because it was showing your geeky side, or was it because we always used to say like stepping out and doing anything different is gonna invite naysayers, or like, was it that part, or was it some combination of the two? Like, what was the fear?
Dude, I didn't want somebody to call my baby ugly.
Yeah.
Right?
I was going to say, this isn't somebody saying your favorite superhero isn't the best superhero, because that's not your superhero.
Yeah.
That's a superhero. I'm like, these are your words.
Right.
This is the thing that you've been poring over, right? I mean, is that, yeah.
No, that's
and
right.
And you love it too, right? And
Exactly.
so like now all of a sudden you have to look at it in a different light. Now all of a sudden, if you're going to publish it yourself, you have to look at it critically, which maybe you haven't cared to do that yet, and all of those things.
Man, 100%. You guys are nailing it. And so it was fear. I was just scared to death to put this thing out there. What was my family going to think? What were my friends going to think? What were my coworkers going to think? What were my clients going to think? Well, and it's just that, right? And it paralyzed me for a good period of time. I let it paralyze me. And the thing that broke it, I knew that I wanted to. I ultimately knew I wanted to do it, and I had to get over it. And I was of all things, I was watching Back to the Future with my two girls, which is one of the great 80s movies that still it holds up today. Not all 80s movies hold up. Back to the Future holds up. We're sitting there on the couch, and the scene at the end of the movie pops up where Marty comes back, he wakes up, goes out, has breakfast with his family, and everything's different, right? Everything's better. And his mom and dad come in, and he's like, holy crap, Mom, you look amazing. Da, da, da. And then Biff comes walking in with that big box, and he sets the box down at the table, and he's like, Marty, it's here. And he opens it up, and it's the book he had written about his interaction with Marty back when he was younger. And he holds the book up, and he looks at his son, and he goes, you can do anything that you put your mind to. And that's a line that I have told my kids so many times. And I've also told them, don't let fear get in the way of you doing amazing things. And I was absolutely convicted. Like, I'm sitting there on the couch and I'm like, I suck. Like, I'm sitting here telling my kids all these things and they know I'm sitting on this thing and I'm too scared to go do something about it. And that was kind of the tipping point for me. And so from that, I just went out and I started there it is, a match made in space. And so, well done. And so I went out and I got a illustrator and I got an editor and I got all the stuff that has to go into all that. And my goal was to have it done by the end of the year. And I had it out on Kindle on the 20th of December, and then paperback came out first of the year.
Perfect.
Congrats, man.
Thanks, dude. Yeah.
Good for you. So excited. Seriously. And by the way, as an illustrator, whoever you hired for the cover, that's well done. That's a beautiful painting. I know we had another author on a few episodes back, and we got off of that interview, and Kendall was like, I wanted to ask so many more questions about the book making process. So like, I would love to go off in that, but if I can for a second, like, you're in this really good job doing really cool stuff with business leaders all over the world at an enterprise level, doing fascinating stuff using neuroscience to enable these sales leaders. And you have this geeky thing on the side, Guys Weekend, you jot it all down. Like, I would imagine that if you filter it down from who has something they like to do outside of what they do full-time, a lot, who actually does anything with that, fewer, who takes it, the thing that they did something with, and like pushes it out into the world, even fewer, and then like who is out there talking about it, excited about it, even fewer. So like, there are these, you've passed through these gates, and I'm very interested to sort of like pick apart some of those. But like, we always talk to people who do interesting things and try to go back to those inflection points or those crossroads and those things that could have stopped you. Is there anything you would say to any of that? Like, are you even there yet? Have you not unpacked why you're naive enough to go out, you know what I mean? To go out and do something cool like this and like actually see it through to fruition? Or are you still too in the journey to be able to figure out why? Or was it just Back to the Future? This is such a convoluted, poorly worded question, but you can see what I'm getting at. Like, I want to encourage others who have a thing, a hobby, a craft, something they've always said they wanted to do, write the great American novel. Why do you think so few people do it? And why do you think you've pushed through those same barriers?
That is a good question. So I'm not any different than anybody else, right? I'm not special by any stretch of the imagination. Anybody can go out and do what they want to do. I think it comes down to the exact same situation that I had to, again, it's not the right analogy, but I had to hit rock bottom to where I had to get conviction from myself, right? So for me, I had to get over my own fear. And I had to get over the fact that I knew people were not going to like it. And there's going to be people out there who don't like this book. And I have to move past that, because there's also people that are really going to enjoy this book. And it's going to be something they can read in conjunction with their kids. And it's something that can bring a little bit of joy. And it's something that ultimately is, not to sound selfish about this, but this is mine. Right? Like, I have the opportunity to do a lot of amazing things at work, but that ultimately ends up being a work, right? Like it is mine, but it's a part of the company. And that's okay. That's the way that works, right? This was something that was mine, that again, I wrote for my family and for my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And if other people can enjoy that, and I feel like there's a lot of people out there that have hobbies, and maybe it's, I have a friend of mine whose wife is taking the exact same leap for herself because she loves to make things out of wood, like different crafts.
Mm-hmm.
And so now she just stepped out and bought a small little space in a little flea market area to sell her stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope she crushes it.
Mm-hmm.
And even if she doesn't, at least the regret of what if I had done that, right? Like, that was another thing that came down to this that my wife shared with me one time is, don't regret that you didn't do this,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't want to regret it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to just sit on this thing and then always be thinking, what if, what if, what if, what if. At least now I know if it bombs, you know what? It's a lot of really nice coasters for somebody that they can use in their house, right? It's not, but at least I put it out there. And
Yeah.
And
You used to
that's
say you regret more the things that you never try than the things that you try and may possibly fail at, right?
dude, right? Like, I have regrets from stuff in high school that pops up at the most weird, random times in my head. And man, I just didn't want to regret it.
But how I just saw you like pick it up. Like, how great is that to hold that and go like, this was me in a Word document at a guy's weekend, and now it's like a thing that I can like. How cool!
So I would say that was a pretty dope moment when it like arrived at my house and I could hold it. It's like, man, all right, that's pretty sweet. That's pretty cool, right? And then I'm flipping through it, and I was like, oh, thank God I didn't find any errors. And then someone found an error, whatever. So it's not like a choose your own adventure, find the error. But but it's yeah, man, I don't 100% know if that answered your question, Corey, but I think for me, just really kind of processing this conversation with you guys and thinking through it, I really think it did come down to the example for my kid,
Mm-hmm.
for my kids, and the regret of if I didn't do it, that would have sucked, right?
I want to share a thought, but then I want to circle back because I think that's an important point to make. One thing I don't like, I know everyone out there, like, you hear about hustle culture and people having like different side gigs or jobs or whatever. I think people also need to hear, and this is unrelated to Jeff, but I think I feel like my opinion is people also need to know that it's okay to not monetize every hobby that they have. People can have things that are just their thing because they like their thing, and don't let everything on social media tell you that every craft or you like taking pictures or you like writing has to be monetized because that's what you should be doing. I think there's too many articles like that make it seem like people have to monetize everything. The kind of quasi question though, or thing that I think that I want to circle back to is the difference is what I'm perceiving as the difference for you. There was probably a cocktail of equal parts enthusiasm and fear. And I think if people are like, well, I don't know that I would want to monetize my thing, that's fine. But if you're excited about it, or you think, oh no, I might regret it if I don't try this, because there's equal parts fear, or maybe not equal parts, but there's a cocktail of fear and enthusiasm that's all bubbling around inside of me, then it is okay to go, then try it, give it a shot, see what you can do with the thing and make the most of it. Just give it your best shot. Is that fair? I feel like you had that enthusiasm in there as well with the fear. Is that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's just important to have a creative outlet, right?
Yeah.
I think so many people, they go to work, they come home, they watch TV, they go to bed. They go to work, they come home, they watch TV, they go to bed. They go to work, they come home, they take their kid to practice, they come home, they go to bed.
Yeah.
And it just, I feel like so many great things are just left out there on the table of people who don't realize it's okay to go get creative. Like,
Yeah.
go find something, go take a cooking class, like just do something that you think sounds cool. And if no one else thinks it sounds cool and you do, go do it by yourself. I wrote this every night between 10 and 12 o'clock. I would sit down for 2 hours and I diligently would work on it. That's what I did every night because I was like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. And it's eating the elephant, right? One bite at a time. And so that's all of a sudden I had this compilation, and then I had to edit it, and then I had to rewrite it, and then I rewrote this first book. No joke. It has to be 8 times. So because you're just constantly fiddling with it. And to your point that when you realize you're putting it out to the public, oh crap, now I have to make this thing shine. So you go back, putting the microscope on it, and so there's a whole nother level to that. But I'm telling you, the inspiration for it again came from the fact that I was hanging out with my friends. I have those type of relationships, and this is something Corey and I were talking about. That another, something else I'm super passionate about, other than people just having a hobby, is just having good core friendships and creating an opportunity to have people in your life. And especially, I speak to a lot of men about this. Not that it isn't important for women. It's just I'm not one, so I can only relate to the dudes. But there is something magical that happens when a group of guys get together over a beer, over a campfire, over a cigar, over a video game. I don't care what it is, but get together in person and spend time and create dialogue and create those friendships. And that is one of the best blessings out there. Seriously, other than my family, one of my biggest blessings is my group of friends. Like, those are the guys who know the crap I go through. Those are the guys who pray for me. Those are the guys who stand in the gap when I need them to. That is invaluable. But that also takes work, right? That has to be something that it doesn't just happen. You have to make those relationships work, and coming together and spending that time together is key. But they're as big a part of this as my family. And so because I love those guys, and having men like that in your life is so vital. And if you don't, I really highly recommend, getting into a church somewhere that has it, or, finding something, because it will change your life.
Yeah, and before I hand it over to Kendall, because I know you're chomping at the bit, brother, I just love, real quick, I just love your design criteria for this book. It was like, this was for my family, this was for my friends. And I find that some of my favorite art, whoever's creating it is just thinking, I just wanted to do what I thought was cool. I just wanted to make movies that I want to watch. I want to make the types of foods that make my mouth water just thinking about them. So that's what I make. And it ends up that those people end up often being the most successful in that area because they're just doing the type of stuff that they personally like. There are artists way better than me that can shade and render light and reflection and color on a canvas like I never will. And I got a lot of flack in art school because I did these characters with big, thick black outlines that were really cartoony and kid friendly because that's what I like. So I found a little route for that. So I'm just saying, I like that you initially, at least, and probably still, we're just like, I just wanted to make the type of story that I would want to read and share with people. And I think for that reason, it will come through in your creation because you eat those foods, you watch those movies, and you go, this person had a lot of fun doing this.
Right? Exactly. 100%. And dude, don't discount. I've seen your work. Dude, your stuff kicks ass. Like, you are an amazing artist. So
I wasn't fishing, but I think that there's beauty in just like doing the stuff you love, and sort of the rules about how you should do it kind of be damned. Like, this is what I feel like doing. And that's not a rebellious spirit. It's just, I think it comes through a lot more in the work is all.
Yeah, I agree.
There's a thread that I'm drawing between the hobby thing and the hanging out with guys thing. And that is that with both of those, you can create this accountability that can be really useful. And what I mean by that is anybody who has walked through levels of depression. Not anybody, but a lot of people who have dealt with depression can relate to the idea of sitting at home alone, being depressed, and just not wanting to do anything, not wanting to go anywhere, canceling plans, and just so that you could be by yourself. But then like something comes up that you can't cancel and you end up having to go, and then that thing, because you're out and about and with other people, starts to pull you out, and then your brain goes, this is what I needed, and like hopefully I remember that next time. And so I feel like sometimes like we need a kick in the pants to get us going. Like for you, like you wrote this book, um and then like you said, you sat on it for a while, and then there was this other adventure that you were going to take, that you knew you should take but didn't, and it took that conviction, sitting on that kick in the pants when you're sitting on the couch to say, all right, I actually do need to do this. And then now you have this thing. Now you have the physical copy in your hand, and now you've experienced these other things. And then the same thing is true if you have a group of guys that you get around on a regular basis. If you stop showing up, they start wondering why you're not showing up, and so like out of obligation, like you'll show up, and then realize that was the kick in the pants that you needed. I think it's perfectly good for people to sort of set that situation up for themselves, to force them to have to do it. Monetizing doesn't have to be the way to do it, but monetizing can be a way to do that. And so I just wanted to add on to that. Basically, I feel like this conversation is probably better and more interesting than the nuts and bolts of getting a book out there. I have incidentally like a couple of friends who are at different stages, different ways of life around them writing books. And one of them is a guy, he's the father of a friend who wrote a book. His story was similar to yours, I think, in that he put this thing together because he wanted to, and it's just the one book. And then, I don't think when he started out, he didn't have plans on publishing anything, but it ended up getting published. And he's a philosophy professor, and so like his book was amazing. But there's like I have another friend from high school who she is a fiction writer, by day job, and in sort of the traditional fashion, like a book deal, and you've got this publishing company expecting 3 books out of her, and like she'll submit a book, like write a book, submit it, and have it get rejected, and it's not one of the 3 that are part of her deal. Like go through that rigmarole. Like that's her life, is that kind of thing. And then another friend who has been in the very sort of beginning stages of thinking that like maybe authorship, fiction writing is something that she wants to be, something she wants to get into, and has been working on learning sort of how to get this book written and finished and accomplished. And she has ideas on where it might go in the future, but present tense, like she would be a self-publisher, just like the philosophy professor was. But I get the sense that she doesn't know exactly where to go, and or maybe she does, and I just don't know her well enough. But so it does interest me, like the idea of you wake up one morning and you decide, let's just say, like you did, let's just say that you have the book, and now you want to see it on Amazon. What do you do?
Yeah. Right. So I didn't know.
Yeah.
So there's a couple great sources. Readsy was a really good source for me. They're a company that just helps authors get started. The smartest decision I made for myself was, again, I told you guys, I'm not necessarily a natural connector, but it certainly is easier to learn from someone who's already been there. So what I did is I just went on Facebook, which I am not a social media guy. I don't like social media for a lot of reasons. It's great in some, not so great in others. However, I looked up my favorite authors in this genre of book, and this genre is called lit RPG. I worked for months to try to get an agent. I worked for months trying to get a deal, and because of a lot of different reasons, the genre being one, this is not something you're going to necessarily find in Barnes and Noble, because they don't consider this genre profitable enough in the space of publication, which is fine. It's a subset of a literature piece that they didn't really have any interest in, which is perfectly fine. That doesn't mean there is not a huge culture that backs this. This is a very fast growing kind of genre. So I found authors that I loved, that I've listened to and read, and I connected with them on Facebook, and I messaged them, and I said, "Hey, look, you don't know me from Adam. My name's Jeff. I'm in the process of writing a book. I'm not 100% really sure where to begin. Can I get 30 minutes on a Zoom call with you, or can I meet you somewhere, buy you lunch, and just get some time?" And all of them live very, very far away, and we couldn't connect that way, and they really didn't do Zoom. However, they said, "People have helped me, so I'm very happy to help you." And so I would just fire them questions, say, "Hey, here's what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts?" "No, I would do this instead. I hit this exact same pitfall. I'll save you $1,000. Don't go through there. Do this." Or, "I have this amazing illustrator. Use them." The biggest one was a very, very prolific author in this space who I've become friends with. He put me in touch with his editor. This guy does not have blocks of time. He is a very much in demand editor. And so I reached out and I said, "Hey, this gentleman recommended you. My name's Jeff. Is there a way you and I could connect on a call?" And he wrote me back. He said, "I really don't do this type of thing, but because you're recommended, I'll give you 15 minutes. So we jumped on a call. An hour and 10 minutes later, we were laughing, talking about kids. I mean, we just connected, right? We absolutely connected. And at the end of that, he said, "Look," he goes, "I don't have space for you, but I'm going to slide you in between these other big ones that I have to do." And I said, "Man, you're the man. That's phenomenal." A week later, I get a message. He goes, "Hey, one of my guys got sick. He's not going to make his deadline. You literally just got bumped to the top. I'm working on your book right now." And he edited my book out, and he did an amazing job. Now, you pay for that type of, like, this wasn't a Fiverr type situation, right? But I never would have gotten access to him if I hadn't just asked the question to someone who's already been where I want to be. And that was the best thing that I did. And I've created phenomenal relationships. Now they've connected me with other people. Like, it just, that network expands out because everybody kind of knows everybody in that space. And that was huge for me.
Did he get a Wii at midnight too?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
all,
one of the
full circle, my friend. Full circle.
one of the rules of podcasting is when you find the point where the current story relates to the first one.
Yep.
That means you gotta wait till next time after that. Like that's
Not just a hat rack, my friend.
I mean, there's 100 people in the metaphorical "I want to write a book" line, and Jeff rings up the guys that are where he wants to be in that space and goes, "How do I get a Wii?" And they go, "There's a list." "Oh, there's a list? This is typing "look" behind the tree in King's Quest." And it's like, you found I don't know, man. I think that's beautiful. But like, I have found that to be true as well with a lot of artists, designers, and illustrators. So willing to give you their time because they're just geeks at a desk at their house too.
Right.
And they're like, does anybody even care? And it was a following and social media, and I got it. And then somebody calls them and go, "Hey, I love your work. Would there be any way I could get some of your time to just ask you a few questions?" I mean, some of the foremost illustrators like Drew Struzan, who used to do the posters for Indiana Jones and Star Wars and Harry Potter was like so willing to hop on a call and just chat about, should I get an agent, and tell me about your process, and just so cool. So I love that you did that. I love that those people like paid it forward, and because someone had done that for them, and somebody's going to be calling you one day and go, you're on book 4 of the Your Quest series. Can you tell me a little bit about how I get on Amazon Publishing? And anyway, I'm geeking out over that. I think that's freaking awesome.
Hmm.
Mic drop.
So what do we do now? Yeah.
So, okay, Jeff, 2 things. What would you say to somebody who is a step or 2 right before you were when you reached out to those other authors who are in the process of thinking about maybe potentially the people Kendall mentioned writing a book? What would you say to them? And then give us all the deets of how to get Your Quest so that we can get started on the first book while you're writing the rest of them.
Yeah. So again, I'll just kind of reiterate what I said. I think, A, just try to get out of your own way. Like that was my biggest issue. Like I realized that when I was worrying so much about what I may or may not do, all of a sudden me wanting to write, the desire for that started to wane.
Mm.
And I caught that. Like all of a sudden the fun started getting sucked out of it because I was sucking the fun.
Mm.
I was a fun sucker. And so, and I was doing it to myself because I was so worried about just stuff that doesn't matter. And so I would just say, don't get in your own way. Tell someone in your support team that what you're doing and why you're excited about it, and get someone like my wife is amazing. She's one of my beta readers. She gives me honest feedback, but she's always building me up. Like, find someone. It doesn't necessarily have to be your best friend if your best friend isn't an edifier. Find someone in your life who's an edifier, someone who can, if your relationship with someone is based on the fact that you love to tear each other down, they may not be the right person. So find someone who you can go, you know what, man, I'm really excited about this. And they say, I'm excited for you, because that will help you. And then thirdly, I think we just talked about it. Reach out to someone who's where you want to be and ask,
Mm-hmm.
what, in your opinion, what can be the next steps? And do it from a place of receiving, not from a place of, come in humble. Like, I don't care what you do for a living. You could be the president of the United States, like, come in humble and go, look, you've had success where I want to have success. What should I do?
Mm.
And I think that will serve you well.
That's profound. Thank you. Okay, so where do people get your book? Tell us.
So Amazon, right? Let's go Amazon. Jeff Bezos it up. So it's on there. So you can type in my name, Jeff Bittner, 2 T's in Bittner, Bittner. That will pull up, and you can also pull up Your Quest. That will pull it up as well, along with, I feel like, a couple of Minecraft random books that are in there. So that's pretty sweet. If you're into Minecraft, that'll pull as well. And jump on in and grab it. So there's book 2 right now is in editing and going to my editor in March. My goal is to have that out in the summer. And then book 3 potentially by end of year. So my goal is to have 2 books out this year and have the first 3 of 8 finished by the end of 24.
We'll go.
See. We'll see. Book 2 definitely will be. Book 3, I think, is going to be a push because it's massive in size. But that's what she said. But but it's that's gonna be a little bit more of a daunting endeavor. So we'll see. But at least book 2 will be out. But my goal is to do between 6 and 9 months between them.
All right, and finally, our probably most important question of the entire interview. Dylan, take it away.
Yeah, I think as a born and bred Midwest guy, you'll appreciate the magnitude of this question. It's one we try to ask everyone that comes onto the show. How do you take your mashed potatoes? Lumps, no lumps? Do you like skins in, no skins, any certain toppings? It's something we value highly here in the Midwest is our mashed potatoes.
Lumps are perfectly fine. I'm not a huge skin fan, but absolutely lumps inside, made within a one of those big mixers. What are the KitchenAid? Those beasts, right? Like a
Okay.
5.5 or a 6-quart. Like load that bad boy up, and an unhealthy amount of butter. And I'm a chives, bacon, sour cream kind of guy.
Okay.
Loaded.
Yeah.
And that is a massive inside joke. And with all my friends who are listening to this, I like my baked potatoes loaded.
Beautiful.
All right.
Here's to my friends.
Can't go wrong. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a ton of fun. We've
Man,
loved
thanks for
having
having
you. I think you said before your goal is for us to have ended this and said we'd love to have him back. Well, I'm sure I can collectively say we'd love to have you back sometime. This has been great. Maybe once the eighth one is written and you're just working on that one, that would be a great time to come back and get your thoughts on the whole series.
All right. So
Well,
2027.
Yeah, I
Fantastic.
was
All
gonna
right.
say, yeah, gosh, Dylan.
Thanks,
we'll have
Dylan.
you-
That makes a guy feel good.
That's not exclusively the only time. I'm just saying
Oh, okay.
also
All right.
when you happen to be
Also,
wrapping
yeah.
up the series.
No, he's
Well-
coming back because I told Jeff I still have this dream, and it might be one of our spin-off non-numbered episodes, what we call our tangents.
Yep.
You guys grimaced when I originally pitched this idea. My wife thinks it's the worst idea ever. I want to have a circle of guys, and the conversation will be, I survived an MLM. And we just talk about our network marketing experience. It will be cathartic. It will be a tool for people who are thinking about or have recently left an MLM. And I think we can do it in a comical and fun sort of way.
It would be amazing. Man, sign me up now. I would love to be a part of that. And if I could toss in my boys Drew and Brennan to be a part of that conversation, I think that would be amazing.
Maybe just don't live stream it. Give yourself a chance to edit. Is all.
Right.
Give yourself that little bit of latitude. Would be good.
All right, Jeff, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. Everybody go to artiusman.com for amazing men's grooming products for your facial hairs. That's artiusman.com, ARTIUSMAN.com. Use promo code The Middle at checkout, and you will get 25%. That's almost a quarter off of your first order, and it will track all subsequent orders. So go get some amazing stuff. They have amazing products. They're made locally here in Columbus by a great guy, and you're going to love that you did that. And we'll be back next Wednesday with another episode. Thanks for tuning in. Bye, everybody.
Bye.